Hello everyone, welcome to Live Interactive English. I'm Mike.
And I'm Sam.
And today we have a wonderful story that's either a bit of history or a fairy tale. Or maybe one of those Aesop's fables.
Yeah, like a legend.
It has
some truth, but...
Yeah, it kind of has a title like that. It's just Bruce and the Spider, like Jack and the Beanstalk, or Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. But this is about a guy named Bruce, and in this case, a spider, not a character you see in a lot of fairy tales or myths, and I think maybe your face is one of the reasons why most people don't really like spiders, and I think you are in that gang, in that group.
Yes, I'm definitely in the category of I'm not big on spiders.
No.
And actually growing up, we used to have these brown spiders that are about this big,
Well,
and
that's
they...
big.
And they'd hang out in the basement and they'd run really fast and they'd always show up like late at night when it's dark. Yeah, but one time I did use a very, very expensive piece of equipment to crush it.
Not a shoe or a rolled up magazine or newspaper?
No, there was nothing like that around. But
Jeez.
what was around was my brother's Xbox. It was plugged into the TV and I was watching TV and I saw the spider run across and I was like, ooh, that's terrifying. So
I'm doing this for your brother. What? You what?
Yeah, I'm not sure
With
if
my
he knows.
what?
But
Wow.
yeah. So I picked up the Xbox, went like this, dropped it on the spider, and then ran out of the room.
So did it work?
I think so. I mean,
You didn't see the spider again.
I didn't see the spider, and so
Okay.
I just hoped. But I mean, the Xbox, those old Xboxes were pretty big.
True.
So
it's kind of heavy.
definitely was in there.
And I just have to ask, was the Xbox okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't think he noticed unless he turned it over and saw spider guts.
Or unless he's watching this now. Now he knows.
Sorry, Alex.
Sorry, bro. All right, let's get to our story, Bruce and the Spider, where I'm pretty sure the spider won't be killed by a video game machine, but we'll just have to find out by reading it. Centuries ago, there was a war between Scotland and England. The King of England wanted to invade Scotland, but Scottish King Robert Bruce refused to give up his country. He was a wise and brave man and fought very hard to defend Scotland from the English king's forces. Even though King Bruce did not have a large army to fight with, he fought fearlessly. However, he lost time and again against his stronger enemy. King Bruce and his men fought in 6 battles, and they were defeated every time. After losing their final battle, the Scottish army scattered and went into hiding.
Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right into our reading this week. So we have Bruce and the Spider, and this is part 1. So we start quite a ways ago, quite a long time ago, and talking about Scotland and England. So let's go ahead and read. And it says, centuries ago, there was a war between Scotland and England. The King of England wanted to invade Scotland, but Scottish King Robert Bruce refused to give up his country, which makes sense. I would feel you don't really want to give up your country. So we've got these 2 kings fighting, and the Scottish king says, don't come over here. And the English king says, I want your land.
Exactly. The English king felt he was powerful. Scotland's a smaller, weaker country. I'm going to go in and take over. What leader of what country is trying to do something like that today? Anyways,
So centuries ago and still happening today.
Things like that still happen today. A big country wants to attack and take over the little country. In this case, England, under one of the King Edwards.
Probably.
I think it was that time. And then this leader of Scotland was Bruce, Robert Bruce. He's got a real person. And so this is the kind of situation Bruce was fighting a very powerful enemy who's trying to take over his country. Now, back to the article. Bruce, was a wise and brave man and fought very hard to defend Scotland from the English king's forces. If anyone's seen that Braveheart movie, it's around that time. And I think actually Netflix made a movie about Robert Bruce with the guy from Star Trek, Chris Pine.
Oh, no way.
I think he played Robert Bruce. So if you want to watch it, that would be interesting. And this story kind of comes from that time. Back to the article, though. So that Bruce is fighting against the English king and the English army, but it's not going well.
And so we read on and we see, even though King Bruce did not have a large army to fight with, he fought fearlessly. So they're fighting so just with
tough.
all their heart.
Absolutely.
And they're not scared because they don't want to lose their country. They are going to fight with everything. But unfortunately, with the next part that we read, we see, however, he lost time and again against his stronger enemy. So even though they have all this heart behind him, they still have a smaller army. They still have a stronger enemy to face. And so things are not going so well.
Yeah, exactly. King Bruce and his men, that's the Scottish soldiers, King Bruce and his men fought in 6 battles, and they were defeated every time. And then we read, after losing their final battle, the Scottish army scattered and went into hiding. So you can imagine they lost all 6 battles. At the end, the English army's there, still strong, still powerful. What can the Scottish army do? What can the soldiers do? They could stay there and get caught or get killed. They could throw up their hands and say, we give up. They could surrender, or they can scatter. They can flee. They can run away and try to save their lives and maybe hope to fight another day, but get away from the English soldiers. So that's what they did.
Yes, and so we had this word scatter. So they're all running in all different directions. So scatter just means to kind of leave one spot where you were maybe all grouped up and then just run in all different directions and go to wherever you can go. That is somewhere, usually if you're trying to hide from somebody or you're scared. And so you say scatter and everybody runs. And so we have this sentence, example sentence, we have the cockroaches scattered when I turned on the light. So yeah, if you had a whole bunch of cockroaches, I guess, in one section and you turned on the light, then they might get scared and they all flee in different directions. And then you probably just need to burn your house down because there are too many cockroaches in your house.
That would be a good way to do it. And then scatter salt on your house so nothing ever grows there again. That's right. Farmers used to scatter seeds, right? Or something. You might say, hey, close the window. The wind will blow in and scatter all the papers on my desk. And just throw them all over the place. And that's what the soldiers were doing. I'll run over here. You run over there. He'll run over there. We will run away. We will scatter. The English soldiers won't find us, but we will fight another day. But for right now, things are not looking good for Bruce and his soldiers in Scotland. Let's take a break.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hualien。这2天要读的故事是 Bruce and the Spider 布鲁斯与蜘蛛，它是一个流传在苏格兰 Scotland 的传说。那么在几个世纪前呢，苏格兰跟英格兰之间发生了一场战争。英格兰国王想要入侵苏格兰，但是苏格兰的 King Bruce 布鲁斯国王他拒绝交出他的国家。虽然没有庞大的军队可以作战，但是他却勇敢无畏的奋战。只是他屡屡败给比他更强大的敌军，在6场战役当中，每次都被打败。然后在输掉最后一场战役之后，苏格兰的军队就溃散到各地躲起来了。单字 scatter 它可以表达分散，使什么分散、散布在各处的意思。那这边2个重点进入文法时间。好，我们来看第一个重点是 give up 的不同用法。第一种呢，它如果当及物用，后面是要接名词或动名词去表达放弃或是让出，像是某事物的所有权或是使用权。它还可以表达戒除，像是戒除某个习惯的意思。举例来说 ，The king gave up his throne for love。那位国王为爱放弃了王位。可以有王位又有爱情吗？这样王后就什么都有了。好，再来看到第2个用法呢，是不及物用法。那么之后呢，可以接 on 加上人或事物去表达放弃什么，对什么不抱希望。如果有一个人他曾经误入歧途，但是家人一直都没有放弃他，那我们就来造句帮他感谢家人。Thank you for never giving up on me。谢谢你们不曾放弃我。 好，那第二个重点是 even though， 它表示虽然尽管，它是 though although 的强调说法，后面接子句，那是用来引导肯定的状况或是已发生的事实。举例来说 ，They bonded quickly even though they had just met。尽管才刚相遇，他们很快就培养出感情。这个 bond 就有那种建立关系啊，培养出感情的意思咯。好，接着回到课文中。
King Bruce lost hope and was forced to run for his life. He wandered by himself for several days in the mountains. There, he grew weaker and even more hopeless. When it started to rain, he found cover under a shed. King Bruce was lying on the ground when he spotted a spider weaving a web above him.
All right, so times are not looking good for King Bruce, the Scottish soldiers. The English king has invaded Scotland, beaten the Scottish at all the battles, and now the soldiers scattered, they've run away. And of course, King Bruce, even though he's the king of Scotland, he is also running away to save his life. As it says, King Bruce lost hope and was forced to run for his life. He's been leading his army very unsuccessfully, losing battles. It seems there's no hope for a free Scotland. They will be taken over by the English king. This is not good. So Bruce, he wandered by himself for several days in the mountains. Maybe he's lost. Maybe he's sad. Maybe he has nowhere to go. But he's basically just walking around out in the open all by himself for at least a few days. Because when you wander, you're basically walking around and you don't have a goal. You don't have a destination. You're not like, I'm going from my home to the bank to the supermarket and then I'm coming back home. No, you're like, hey, this is a new city. Let's just go walk around and see what we find. Or it's a beautiful day. Let's go to that big park. What do you want to do there? I don't know. Let's just walk around and see what we can do. For example, on Julian's first day in Taipei, he wandered around the streets near the hotel. He wasn't lost. He was just kind of checking stuff out.
Yeah, which is something I think a lot of people do when they go on vacation. They get into their hotel, wander around a little bit, maybe find some food, and then go back and then maybe prepare for the next day. So wandering is always kind of a fun thing to do. Hopefully, though, you don't actually get lost. So he's wandering around the mountains, but the nice thing is it is still his home country, so he probably kind of knows where he is a little bit.
A little bit, hopefully.
Yeah. So then, continue on with our reading. We have there, he grew weaker and even more hopeless. So again, he's out in the mountains, he's wandering around by himself, and now he's getting even weaker and more hopeless because things just don't look that good for him right now. And so we continue on. We have, when it started to rain, he found cover under a shed. King Bruce was lying on the ground when he spotted a spider weaving a web above him. So, yeah, he's not in the best of spots. He was out in the wilderness by himself. And then it started to rain because, of course, it always rains when you're having a bad day. And then he finds a shed and he kind of hunches it under the shed and lays down on the ground. And now there's even spiders there. So things are not looking so great.
Things are not looking good. No, he's got a shed over him. That's a simple wooden building, maybe used by a farmer to keep their grass dry or something for the cows to eat. But it's not exactly even a home. Actually, I've read of this story in another version. He's in a cave. He finds a nice cave in the side of a mountain. So both of those ideas show you that he's sleeping outside, basically. He doesn't have a warm, comfortable castle to live in. And either in the shed or in a cave, he sees a spider there, as you will find spiders living outside in places. And this spider is weaving a web. Well, that's what, spiders do, right? They weave webs. Because when you weave something, basically, you're making something out of thread. When we think of people, we think of weaving clothes or weaving a blanket or a carpet. You might do it by hand. You might use a big machine called a loom, and they take those threads and they kind of, put them together in that special way. So then you have cloth, and then you can make clothes, blankets, blankets, towels, all that other stuff. But sort of getting those threads, those strings together to make a piece of cloth, that is to weave. And we use the same term to talk about when a spider makes a web. Even though it's a little different, the result, can kind of look the same. Anyways, so for this verb, weave, she wove, that's the past tense, she wove a small basket out of grass. Again, by taking the grass and tying it and moving it and putting it in places so it becomes a whole thing.
Yes, and so then we also had this word web, and you may have heard this word in other situations like the World Wide Web and the internet and all that kind of stuff, or in Spider-Man. And so it is just this web that comes from spiders. It's this silky thread that the spider will kind of use and to build that whole home. That whole home is called the web. And so it's very sticky.
Catches flies.
Yeah, and there's a lot of spider webs, I feel like, in Taiwan that I end up walking through, and I
if you
never
go hiking.
Yes, I never notice it, and then it's stuck in my face and just But anyway, so that is a web. So this spider was weaving a web. It's a noun, and our example sentence is, there's a large web on the branches of the tree, but I don't see any spiders, which happens a lot because sometimes a spider will hide up in the corner.
True.
And when they feel a little tug on their web, then they'll come down and
by that
get
time
it.
they're in your hair or something like that. But as we say, Bruce is not looking really in a good situation here. He does have a spider friend. That's nice for him. We're going to have to find out what happens in part 2 tomorrow when we come back for that. So we hope to see you then. Bye! You got a spider in your hair.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
输掉最后一场战役之后，苏格兰军分散到各地躲起来。King Bruce 他失去希望，那他被迫为了要保命而逃亡，他就独自在山上游荡了好几天，变得越来越虚弱，更加绝望。那当开始下雨的时候，他就在一个棚子下找到遮蔽的地方。那他就躺在地上，然后看到一只蜘蛛正在他上方在编蜘蛛网。文中用到 shed 这个字 ，shed， 它表示棚子或者是小屋。Mike 老师说，他也有听过另外一个版本的故事，是说 King Bruce 是躲在洞穴里面。那老师用到 version 这个字 ，version，version 表示版本或者是说法。Sam 老师则提到 King Bruce 一开始可能是弓着身子在棚子里面躲雨，那他用到 hunch，hunch 可以表达使隆起，像是使背部隆起，弯成弓状。好，那么课文单字 wander 它表示游荡、闲晃，是漫无目的的游荡。Weave 表示编织、编制。Mike 老师则提到 loom，loom 表示织布机。再来我们看到 web 在这里不是网络哦，而是指网，蜘蛛网。那刚刚说看到一只蜘蛛正在编蜘蛛网，这边有一个重点，我们要进入文法时间。好，我们来学感官动词的用法。感官动词呢，是指看、听、闻、感觉之类的动词。像我们课文里面有用到 spot， 它就有看见、瞥见的意思。那其他还有常见的动词，像 watch、look at、notice、observe。Listen to, hear, smell, feel 等等。那我们以下介绍3种用法。第一种呢是用感官动词加受词加原形动词，这是强调事实或是过程，像是 We didn't notice anyone leave the room。我们没有注意到有任何人离开房间耶。好，那么第二个用法是用感官动词加受词加上现在分词 VING， 这是强调动作正在进行哦。例如 He heard someone talking downstairs。他听到楼下有人正在讲话，他听到有这个动作正在进行。好，那么第3个用法是感官动词加受词加过去分词 PP， 则是在强调被动。例如 They saw a car stuck in the mud。他们看见一辆车卡在泥泞里了。好，那以上是今天的讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
Centuries ago, there was a war between Scotland and England. The King of England wanted to invade Scotland, but Scottish King Robert Bruce refused to give up his country. He was a wise and brave man and fought very hard to defend Scotland from the English king's forces. Even though King Bruce did not have a large army to fight with, he fought fearlessly. However, he lost time and again against his stronger enemy. King Bruce and his men fought in 6 battles, and they were defeated every time. After losing their final battle, the Scottish army scattered and went into hiding. King Bruce lost hope and was forced to run for his life. He wandered by himself for several days in the mountains. There, he grew weaker and even more hopeless. When it started to rain, he found cover under a shed. King Bruce was lying on the ground when he spotted a spider weaving a web above him.
Rosestone is a beautiful naturally occurring stone. It can be found in the rivers of Hualien. The stone derives its name largely from its pink-red color. The pink color and the veins of green and black in the stone make amazing patterns. Some even resemble paintings of Chinese landscapes. Rosestone can be used to make accessories, stamps, paperweights, skin-scraping plates, and so on. They are great gifts and souvenirs. The large pieces are valuable ornaments and collectibles. Rosestone is one of Hualien's unique treasures.
See you next time!